everyone? Welcome in today. Today, we're going to go through our top 10 offensive linemen in 2025 NFL draft. I was initially going to split these guys up between guards and tackles, but I think there's a lot of flexibility in this draft class. So the easiest way is just to stick them together because there's guards who could potentially play tackle like a Donovan Jackson, and there's a lot of tackles who I think could play guard. Do I think they need to play guard? Not necessarily, but they easily could at the next level. We're going to jump this off at number 10 with Ariante Ursary, the 6'6", 331-pound tackle out of Minnesota. He has 33 and an eighth inch arms, 9.5-inch hands. He ran a 5.0 140-yard dash. Honestly, I was not expecting that out of him. He had a 1.75 10-yard split, 29.5-inch vertical, 9.3 broad jump, a 7.813 cone, a 4.82 short shuttle, and 25 bench press reps. Let's go ahead and jump into my blurb on him. He is a hulking player who I think can stick at tackle in the NFL. He plays high and doesn't appear to have the knee bend to fully sink his hips and play at a lower pad level. I do think he looks good as a pass protector, and he does a good job getting depth in his pass sets, but faster players will beat him to a spot on occasion and cause him to lunge, which gets him off balance. I think he does a good job stopping power rushers or rushers who have a harder time winning the outside shoulder with his strong anchor. I think he struggles with hand placement versus both the run and the pass, and he will shoot his hands high and wide at times, leaving his chest exposed and making it so his power isn't always on display. And some stronger defensive players will be able to control him based on that. I think he is a better fit for a power-based team because I think he struggles getting to the second level as a blocker, especially if you want him to chip. Now, if you just want him to take on a guy one-on-one, like head-on, he will wash the defender out of the gap and he'll win with his power. Here's the thing with him. I have a round 2 grade on him. And I think mid to like in the 40s would be 40s to 50s is a perfect spot to get him. He could maybe sneak into the top of the second round. I don't think that's quite as high as I would go on him, but he's a good tackle prospect. Like I said, he's a power based guy. He'd be able to come in, and he probably will never be able to be a top-end offensive tackle, but I think he'll be able to develop into a good player who can be a solid, steady guy. Honestly, to me, it's a little bit more like Orlando Brown is his upside, which honestly can work in the NFL, and that's not a bad get in the second round. Let's go ahead and move on to number 9 on our list. It's Marcus Mbo. He is 6'4", 303 pounds. He has 32-inch arms and 10.5-inch hands, and then he ran a 4.67 20-yard shuttle at the combine. Let's go ahead and jump into his blurb real quick. He is a smooth athlete for the tackle position. He is very comfortable in his pass sets. He is a very athletic prospect who played right tackle in college, but due to his lack of length that shows up on his film at times, I think he projects as a guard who could play some tackle in the NFL if needed. I think he may be the best pulling offensive lineman in this entire class. He always keeps his pads down and stays in good position, and his eyes are fantastic because he always finds work on the very first unblocked defender that he sees. I think he has very good instincts for the position, and he plays with a high IQ. I do notice that he needs to add power to his frame as stronger players can push him back into the pocket. As far as hand placement, I think he'll sometimes punch the shoulders and grab there, which is a penalty waiting to happen, but you can easily clean that up. I gotta be honest with you, Marcus Mbo is somebody I really like. I have a round 2 grade on him, and I do think he's gonna have to play guard in the NFL. You know, the 32-inch arms, you can survive with them, and he has the quickness to maybe be able to, and the smarts, but the thing is, I just don't think he's going to be able to pull it off. I think you're best to put him inside a guard. I think he'll be able to use that athleticism. He could get in like a Dolphins scheme where he pulls a lot, and I think he'd be an awesome guard in the NFL. Like I said, he's a smart player, does need to add some strength, but he's really, really, really fun to watch. Like, I got to be honest with you. I was watching him, and, offensive line can be in some ways a little boring to watch at times. I had fun watching him just because of how athletic he is, how well he moved, and I know I might be a little bit high on him, but I have a round 2 grade. I could see him going in the early 40s. Like, I really, really like Marcus Bo. I think he is a great player, man, and he has a lot of upside. I wish he was longer because he would be a great tackle prospect if he had that length. But without that length, I'm going to say he's probably best to move inside the guard. Like I said, he's one of them players that it's like the flexibility of like, I could see a team letting him try and fail at tackle first and then moving him inside the guard later just because, he has the athleticism that you're looking for to play tackle. And he is quite fun to watch there, honestly. So he is a good player. It's just that one physical limitation is going to hold him back. Let's go ahead and move on to number 8 on our list, and it is Donovan Jackson. He played tackle in the college football playoffs, but he's a guard out of Ohio State. He comes in at 6'4", 315 pounds. Let me get his combine scores up for you. He had 33.5-inch arms, 9 7/8 hands. He did not test at the combine. Let's go ahead and read my blurb on him, and it says he looks to have a fantastic anchor as a pass protector. I rarely see him giving up ground even to power players. I do notice that at times his hand placement is wide wide versus both the pass and the run, leading to his strong punch not being as effective as it can be and opening himself up to penalties as well. He also leaves his hands wide after punching, which will make him more susceptible to holding penalties. And he likes to really grab on the outside of the shoulder pads, which is just, that's bad. That's gonna get called in the NFL. I think he shows a good amount of power as a run blocker, but stronger players end up being more of a stalemate. Players with more average strength, he will walk them out of the gap and win the rep with ease. He struggles to turn and seal off stronger players at times on tape. Now, some of that I did notice at left tackle, which he was adjusting to on the tape I watched. Like, it's not his natural position, so it is, you got to be able to project a little bit there, but I seen it and I wanted to notate it. He played left tackle at the end of the season, although I didn't see his national championship game yet. From what I did see, I think he struggles to hold the edge versus speedier defenders. So playing guard in the NFL is probably just his best fit going forward. He's a strong dude, man. Donovan Jackson's really strong. And he's a solid guard prospect. Like, honestly, in a lot of ways, I liked him as much as I like Tyler Booker watching him play, which is somebody else you'll hear about later on. But with him, it was his wide hand placement that worried me. He constantly punched wide and grabbed, like I said, in them shoulder pads on the edges. And that's just going to get called. You got to work on that. That's a technique thing. And then if he gets that cleaned up, I could see him being a solid offensive lineman in the NFL for the next 15 years. Let's go ahead and move on to number 7 on our list. And that's going to be Josh Connerly Jr., the tackle out of Oregon. He comes in at 6'5", 311 pounds. He has 33.5-inch arms, 10 3/8 inch hands. He ran a 5.05 40, which is really impressive. A 1.71 10-yard split, 34.5-inch verticals, explosive, 8.7 broad jump. He's an athlete. Here's the thing with him. He looks like an athletic prospect who needs to add strength to his game, but due to his natural gifts, he has high ceiling. I noticed that he struggles to move defenders at the line of scrimmage versus the run that leads to more stalemates than lanes being opened. I think he handles faster players very well in pass pro due to his athletic gifts, but he does overset at times, leaving the inside open, which causes him to lunge and get off balance. Now, as far as his anchor in pass pro, that is a big question for me, and a big reason why I have him so low on this list is I think he needs to add a lot of strength to his body in order to be an effective NFL player. You'll see stronger players walk him back, and he really struggles to stop them and anchor down. That's kind of the thing with Josh Connerly. Like, I really wanted to love him due to his athletic gifts, and he has pretty good length. He doesn't have the 34-inch arms you're looking for, but he does have good length. I just think that for him, strength's a big question. And if he can get stronger, he will be a good NFL player. Don't get me wrong. He has a long way to go. And to me, he's a late round 1, early round 2 guy, and I wouldn't be shocked if a team takes a flyer on him at the end of round 1. But it also wouldn't shock me to see him dip a little bit just because he does need some work. Let's go ahead and move on to number 6 on our list, and that's going to be Gray Zabel. He is the offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. He comes in at 6'6", 312 pounds. He had 32-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands, a 36.5-inch vertical, which is impressive, 9'3" broad jump, and 26 bench press reps. Now, Gray Zabel played tackle in college, but I do believe he is going to end up playing guard in the NFL. I do want to lead with that. He's a really fun prospect to watch, and he dominated the Senior Bowl. The biggest issue for me is in this eval is I do only have one tape right now on him, and I was able to watch the Senior Bowl reps and the one tape. It's just hard to find North Dakota State tape, so I have that to go off of, and that's it. So there's a lot of projection in this. I loved watching him win every rep, it seemed like, during Senior Bowl practices, but as far as the tape I did watch, he also looked very impressive. I think he has a very good anchor in pass pro, and he sinks his hips and stonewalls defenders off. I really liked how quick he seemed to get out of his stance and get into his drop sets, but I will say at times, or his kick slides, but I will say at times he overset and left the inside open. Notice that his punch was late and defenders could get into him, and I think that's just where his lack of length showed up. They could get into his chest. It was against Colorado, so he was playing the FBS players who are a little bit bigger and more of what he'll face in the NFL. And I could see his lack of length show up at times. And sorry, I lost my spot. And he was just along for the ride and trying to survive. But moving to guard or even center for him should help mitigate these issues. As a run blocker, I was really impressed with his ability to easily do reach blocks and also his ability to chip and impact the defender with his chip while quickly getting to the second level to find his man and being able to win that rep as well. I will say I think he needs a little more strength in his game because power did impact him a bit. And I noticed that during the Senior Bowl game. But right now for me, Gray Zabel's a round 1 prospect. I think he goes in the first round, and I think an NFL team has a starting interior offensive lineman for the next 10 years. Like, he's a fun watch. He's a really good athlete. And for his for his position, obviously. You know, if you wish he had the length to be able to play tackle in the NFL, but he just doesn't. So he is going to have to move inside. A lot of people think he could project really well as a center, and he did look really good there at Senior Bowl. Honestly, man, he kind of reminds me of Cody Barton out of Duke last year that my Tampa Bay Buccaneers took, and that's a really good sign. Like, it's right in the same range I would take him, and he's just going to be a solid NFL player, I think. Let's go ahead and get into the top 5 on our list. But first, if you would, please hit that subscribe button for me. It's a great way to help the channel out. It's going to allow me to grow, and I would greatly appreciate that. And also, while you're at it, if you could hit that like button as well, that right there is going to help this video be found by more and more people and help me keep going and help more people see these rankings. Either way, let's move on. Coming in at number 5 is Kelvin Banks Jr., the tackle out of Texas. He comes in at 6'5", 315 pounds. Comes in with 33.5-inch arms. He ran a 5.16 40, which wasn't bad. 179 10-yard split, 32-inch vertical, 8.8 broad jump, 7.8 3 cone, and a 4.66 20-yard shuttle. Let's get into our blurb on him. He is an athletic tackle prospect who could slide in the guard in the NFL. I think he looks smooth during his kick slides or pass sets, whatever you want to call them, but at times he can get his feet too wide and it can get him off balance and end up with him either on the ground or allowing pressure because the defender is able to control the pass set. He seems to have a good punch, but at times his hands can get wide, leading him to not be able to get the grip on the defender, and he will lose control of the rep and they just shed and get pressure off of him. Overall, he looks steady in pass pro, but he does need some development at the next level, in my opinion. Like I said, hand placement's a big thing, and not oversetting is another big thing I noticed there. I think that Versterani a better prospect who is more pro ready. I don't think that he really moves people one-on-one, but he can turn and seal them off, which is perfectly fine. Now, I think when he double teams with another player, that's when you will get to see him with movement and being able to wash a player out of a gap. And that also shows up as well when he's doing down blocks. I do think even versus a run, he will get his feet wide and lose balance at times and he ends up on the ground. Basically, here's the thing. That's a kind of a negative sounding note. I'm not going to lie. I like Kelvin Banks Jr. I just have a real big issue with offensive linemen who end up on the ground a lot, because if you're on the ground, you're not blocking and your guy's making an impact on the play. So to me, that's the big question I have with Kelvin Banks. I think a lot of it's correctable. Like I said, his feet get wide at times. He loses his base and then he goes off balance because he lunges. And that's why, for me, honestly, he's somebody that I have my final grade in. This is where he is. But I'm not going to lie to you. He's on my list that as long as I have time prior to the draft, I want to rewatch his tapes again. Just confirm that this is where I want him. And that's not to say that I want to move him down. It's just, like I said, that's a negative note. So I really want to make sure, like, obviously, I read it out loud after I write it, but sitting here reading it now, it sounds a lot of negative for somebody with such a high grade. So some of the positives that I've seen in his game, he has pretty good play strength, and he is plenty athletic enough to play tackle. He looks comfortable. Like I said, he just gets his feet wide at times and he ends up on the ground. And, you know, for me, that's just a big red flag, and it's something that really makes me worry about him going into the future. But either way, he's a round 1 prospect, in my opinion. I think he can come in and be a solid tackle for you. I do think maybe guard could be in his future, but I don't think he needs to play guard. I think he's perfectly fine at tackle, but it'd be nice to maybe start him at guard for a team and then be able to kick him out and tackle to replace somebody in a year. So that way he gets some development. I think he needs a little bit more work than a lot of people. Either way, let's move on to number 4 on our list, and that's Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. He's 6'5", 321 pounds. He has 34.5-inch arms, 11-inch hands. He ran a 5.38 40, a 1.96 10-yard split, just a 27-inch vertical, 7.10 broad, 7.96 3 cone, 4.8 420, and he had 21 bench press reps. Let's go ahead and read our blurb on him. The first thing you notice is the power in which he plays with. You notice it in his punch, especially when he is mauling and moving people out of run lanes. In pass pro, he anchors with ease versus power and rarely gives up much ground. I love watching his IQ on the field show up, especially with double teams, because he'll double team at the point, get to the second level, and he always seems to find the right guy to block. He also likes to point things out pre-snap, which you like to see as well. Now, I don't think that he is a good puller at all. In fact, his lack of athleticism really shows up and leads to multiple issues for him. The biggest issue is that most cases when he pulls, the backs either beat him to the edge or he doesn't end up blocking anyone because he ends up on the ground and lunging at him trying to make the block. I do see finesse players occasionally beat him to the inside or outside with a very quick first step in pass pro. Basically, the biggest question with Tyler Booker is what type of offense you run. He's not going to fit in like a Mike McDaniel offense. He's just not athletic enough, and that's not what they're looking for. You want to ask him to be a puller and a move blocker, and it's just not a good idea. He's kind of a more keep him in the box and let him just maul people. That's what he does. And as long as you ask Tyler Booker to do that, he's going to be an elite player in the NFL. And I know it's kind of weird to have him at number 4 on the list and say that about him, but to me, I think he could come in and be an elite guard. You just have to put him in the right scheme, and you'll never have to worry about your guard position as long as he stays healthy. Let's go ahead and move on to number 3 on our list. It's offensive tackle Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. He comes in at 6'5", 317 pounds. He has 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands, and he wasn't able to work out. And he has a red flag alert for me, which is just he has a torn patellar tendon, which happened midway through the season against Oregon. And then there's also character questions as well. And I want to say it was Todd McShay I seen that from, where NFL teams are worried about maturity with him. So I had to drop his grade, and it ended up impacting his grade quite a bit because honestly, to me, he's the number 1 true tackle in this class, if fully healthy and without the character concerns. But due to that, both factors, he ends up falling to number 3 in his final grade. Let's go ahead and read the blurb I have on him. Simply put, he has the best tape in this class. The only problem is that he didn't face the best competition on Ohio State's schedule. He moves exceptionally well, and he looks like a prototype NFL left tackle. He has a very good anchor first to pass and quickly gets to a spot with great athleticism. The issues that I noticed on tape are related to his grip strength. He simply doesn't latch onto defenders and move them versus the run or the pass. It's not a very long blurb, but overall, man, he is just a fantastic. He was awesome. There wasn't a lot of negatives that showed up on film. Like I said, grip strength was really the only thing I seen. He looks athletic. He looks smooth. He looks like an NFL left tackle. If he didn't have an injury and if he didn't have a few character questions, to me, this dude's easy top 10 pick. But due to that, he's going to be a first round pick in my opinion. I wouldn't let him slide outside of the first round, man. I think somebody in the 20s could get a steal with this guy if he even gets that far. I don't know that I would let him. If he does, you're going to have a good prospect. I guess the character is like the one thing, and the knee, of course, you have to worry about. But I'm telling you, man, I loved watching him play. As a tackle, he did everything right. He looked like what you wanted a tackle to look like. You didn't see issues with length showing up. You didn't see issues with really much showing up on tape. He just at times wouldn't get a hold of somebody. He'd land the punch, and instead of getting a hold of him and controlling it, his hands would kind of slide off and they could make a play. And that even happened very rarely. So he was just a great tackle prospect. He's in at number 3. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. And for me, it's going to be Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU. And yes, I'm going to keep him at tackle, I think, in my rankings. He's 6'6", 319 pounds. Comes in with 32 and 5/8 inch arms, 9.5 inch hands, 4.78 40, a 1.76 10-yard split, 32-inch vertical, 9.5 broad jump. The thing with him is just the length issues, but we'll talk more about that after we get through the blurb on him. He's a very athletic and smart left tackle, and that's the very first thing you notice when you are watching him. He is very technically sound and has fantastic feet and good hand placement. He has a strong punch to stun defenders initially and shows good grip strength to latch on to defenders and control the rep. I think he is a very good run blocker, moves defenders, especially on down blocks. The issues I notice on tape are lack of length that shows up when he faces longer players and he plays with a very high stance, which makes me question his ability to sink his hips and bend his knees and move inside the guard at the NFL level. And he has a tiny wingspan. You have to discuss that as well. You know, he has shorter arms already, and so do a lot of the tackles and guys in this class, which is why it's so kind of fluid and flexible. But for Will Campbell, a lot of those guys with shorter arms paired it up with an 82-inch, 83-inch wingspan. Will Campbell's is like 77. That's not good, man. He's just simply not long enough, in my opinion, to really be a successful tackle. But you're betting on the athleticism, you're betting on the smarts, you're betting on the technique with him, because I don't think interior is really the path forward to him. And I question how much he'll be able to transition because he plays high. Like if you look at his stance, man, he is like straight up in his pass sets. He is straight up. I don't know. I have some questions there. Even though he was able to succeed in the SEC, I'm just not sure. Like power will knock him back, and he had a good enough anchor to where, it would stun him initially, and then he would settle and lock in. But I worry about, like I said, the lack of length. And if a guy gets a hold of him, like there's nothing that you can do there. Technique isn't going to matter if a guy gets to you first and just controls the rep that way. And the NFL has a ton of players that are going to be able to do that. So there's just a few questions for Will Campbell. But ultimately, I think he could be a really good tackle in the NFL. Guard, it could work out as long as he can bend and get low enough. Otherwise, it's not going to work out for him there. He's just kind of a real questionable player for me, and I wanted to love him and give him a huge grade, but I'm going to just give him a round 1 grade, which means I would take him. He could go top 10. I probably wouldn't, but, he is, not to spoil my eventual top 50, but right now he's number 10 on my big board. So he could go top 10, but more likely or not, I'd settle with him in the early teens, area. Let's go ahead and move on to the number one player on my offensive rankings list this year, and that's going to be Armand Membu, the tackle out of Missouri. He's 6'4", 332 pounds. He comes in with 33.5-inch arms, 9 and 7/5/8 hands. He ran a 4.9 140, and he had a 1.74 10-yard split, 34-inch vertical, 9.7 broad jump, and he hit 31 on the bench press, which is impressive, especially with those arms. Let's go ahead and I'll read the blurb on him, and then we'll discuss him further. He looks very smooth and has great technique in his kick slides. He seems to keep his shoulders square, and he seems to have very good eyes. His hand placement is generally good, and he has a good strong punch. Some struggles show up on timing of the punch at times. He can be a little bit late, and that leads to power players getting into him and walking him back at times. However, he's usually still able to anchor and hold them back. Most people say he is a nasty and tough run blocker, but for me, I think he shows a good nastiness, but at times he just completely whiffs on a man, and he can be more of a block sealer than a block mauler and finisher, like what they describe him as, in my opinion. The good news is he does keep his feet moving and he doesn't lose momentum, but at times I see defenders slip him, and I think it's again due to his hands just not latching on and using his grip strength. He is very young, so I think he could easily improve his technique and fix this at the next level. To me, Armand Membu is a top 10 player in this class. I pretty much am certain I would take him in top 10 in this class. He's a young prospect who has a lot of developing to do still, but he is solid. He is steady. He looks comfortable out there playing tackle. Now, the thing with him, he's not a left tackle. He played right tackle in college, and I do think that's probably the best path for him in the NFL. And you hear people talk about some teams are grading him as a guard. Dude, he'd be an awesome guard. I have no issues if that's what they were to decide to do with him, but I think he can play right tackle, and there's more value in him playing right tackle in the NFL. I really like Armand Membu. At the end of the day, he is my top prospect. He just beat out Will Campbell with my final grades, and it's close, don't get me wrong, but I think Membu's just, the length is a real question for Will Campbell for me. Like, I love a lot of things about Will Campbell, and I wanted to make him my top tackle prospect, but I just have too many questions to be able to comfortably be like, no, he's top 10 and I'm not worried about it. That gave Membu the edge, and that doesn't diminish Membu. I think Membu's awesome. Like I said, I'm giving him a top 10 grade, and I really love Armand Membu, and I think a team getting him is going to have their right tackle solved for the next 10 years. Do I think he'll be able to play left tackle? Honestly, I'm not 100% sure that he's going to be able to do that. Like, he has good athleticism and all, but I just question how that's going to translate. He just, to me, looks like a right tackle at the NFL level, and that's perfectly fine. They're a valuable position. But that's it for my top 10 players. Some other guys that I watched that I didn't end up talking about, we had Jonas Savanaia out of Arizona. I think he'll move to the interior from tackle. I watched Charles Grant. I have some Tate Ratledge, Cameron Williams, Jared Wilson, and Wyatt Milam, who's somebody I really liked early on, but throughout the process, he struggled at the Senior Bowl. My grade on him had to drop. It was really disappointing. I liked Milam. I thought starting this process off, I watched a game early this year, and I thought he could be a top 10, or not a top 10. I thought he could be a first-round tackle, but he's just not. So it is what it is. But next up, we're going to have edge rushers, and that video should be out later this week. So I want to thank you for watching. If you want to catch that video, hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. I'm out.